The Persona series is one I feel like needs very little introduction, especially since its boom in popularity in 2016 with the release of Persona 5, which really skyrocketed the series into the mainstream, for better or worse. One quote-unquote criticism I've seen for the series a couple of times is that the high school setting can be a bit stale after almost every single game being set in a school. Now I want to preface this all by saying that the criticism is really dumb, and very often used by people who don't understand why the games are set in high school in the first place. To keep this brief, most people tend to have their most freedoms while in high school, bringing the characters up for the day-to-day social life aspect of the Persona series. This especially goes double in Japan from the tense work environment their entire society is built around. Specifically, during the average Japanese week, you could be looking at a 5 to 6 day work week with a mandatory overtime, meaning the Persona day schedule would be cut drastically down to just one evening to do things on some days. However, I do think the idea of a Persona game in an adult setting is fairly interesting in the type of narrative that could tell, since the series is pretty much built around the core idea of telling modern stories that comment on societal issues of their time. Also, I think the more limited schedule would be a great way of setting the tone for the story and really challenging the player to make the most of their free time. Some particular issues I think that would make for some great themes to play off of for the adult setting would be societal isolation, fears of losing your passion with age, losing faith in old dreams, and most notably, the struggle of disillusionment in the modern world. I feel like all of these are ideas that would be best portrayed through the view of a more adult cast of characters. Also, for this video, I want to start by saying I'm mostly going to focus on the broad story structure, cast for the main party, gameplay changes, battle, and social aspects, and some in-world lore stuff. And with all that preamble out of the way, I hope you're still willing to embark on this Persona fanfiction journey with me, just to kind of see the type of story you could tell in this setting. Firstly, mirroring the start for most Persona games, I think having our MC be a new hire at an office building would be a decent enough analog for a transfer student that we see in most of the games. You could just have it so that he moved to the city for work from a town that's more far off. As for what city, I don't really know. I'm a pretty big weeb, but not big enough to know the distinct qualities of different Japanese cities. So just kind of envision our setting as any metropolitan city in place Japan. Here our MC works in a typical office building where they mostly stick to themselves, outside of ending up in a friendship with an exuberant guy working in the mailroom of the building. Hint, hint, this is the best friend kind of character archetype. After a couple days of working normally and letting the player really soak up the atmosphere and constrictive schedule, the MC and friend guy, Saito Furukawa, find a portal in a puddle near their work building after a night of drinking. This portal leads to this game's kind of Shadow World, Mementos, Tartarus kind of Persona space, where the two find a mysterious woman and the MC first awakens to his persona, the Vorpal Blade, which I'm going to have personas work kind of differently in this game compared to how they normally function in the series. In this entry, personas for the party more worked as an enhanced form for their base weapon of choice, giving them more attacks and magic. However, the MC would still have the usual persona abilities, since I don't want to work those poor 3D modelers to death making weapon forms for every single persona in the game. The in-lore reason for the limited persona appearance could be that the adult characters have a more hardwired view of the world, so they would kind of struggle to see their inner selves in more creative light than just a tool that they're familiar with. Back to the story, after escaping, the mysterious girl reveals her name, Nimue, that the place they just left was the shadow of their office building, and that she was attempting to find the parasite shadow that possesses it. Location shadows act like the previous game's dungeons, with the boss of said dungeons being a parasite shadow, a type of shadow that possesses a building or area and affects the people that frequent this area the most. This is most commonly just by tuning up their most negative personality traits and having them act in accordance with the parasite's goal, which at this point is still not completely understood. Nimue also explains that she herself is a shadow, but a shadow of the collective hope of the affected, meant to stop the parasite shadow, and the two agree to aid her. The next day, the party goes back into the building shadow, and after Saito gets cornered on his own when fighting off the parasite shadow, he eventually awakens his own persona, Caliburn. From here, the player is more open to explore the world and dungeon kind of as they wish. Dungeon exploration is going to pretty much work as it did in Persona 3 and Persona 4, since I think the stealth mechanics are more thematic if they're left in Persona 5, with some aspects of dungeon crawling returning, like the safe rooms for example. From here, the player must find the new location of the parasite shadow and prepare to confront them. Also in the dungeon, the party will be stalked by the party member's shadow all throughout the exploration. These shadows are like the boss shadows from Persona 4 and are the unconfronted side of the party member who awakened their persona in that dungeon. So, Saito's shadow for this example. These party member shadows also play a big part into the morality mechanic I think would be fun to give to this game's story. Imagine it like the system from Catherine, but instead of just good versus evil or order versus chaos like in the mainline SMT series, I wanted to focus it to reflect the themes of this story, being hope for the future versus disillusionment of humanity's worst traits. When battling the party shadows, you have the choice of just defeating it outright like a normal mini-boss for a good amount of XP for the whole party, or having the party member associated with the shadow accept the shadow as a part of them, and thus gaining a lot of XP, but just for them. I feel like this is a good way of making it a harder choice of the players, so instead of just good ending, bad ending, it's more of a nuanced gameplay choice in how they want to level their party. Another influence on the morality mechanic would be the player's decision and how to finish off the boss of each dungeon, which would be capturing or destroying the shadow. Having Nimue capture the parasite shadow will let it safely disperse into the environment, allowing all the affected to slowly work off the negative effects of its possession. Whereas on the other hand, eradicating the boss would be pretty freaking sweet and probably give a cool cutscene or something, but it would leave the affected to instantly snap out of the possession and not naturally recover or learn from their behavior while possessed. Either way, the player gets rewarded the same, and only the morality gauge would change. However you do it, after beating the parasite shadow, Raios, the party will leave the dungeon, but Nimue's continued presence in the world proves that there are still more parasites in the world, and the gang decides to try and find and stop them. This will lead to the next lull between events, where the player can get to explore the world more and start social links, level up social stats, or just go back and grind in the still active office building shadow. During this time, the top accountant at the MC's company is found dead in his office under mysterious circumstances, with it later being revealed that he was laundering money from the company by cutting off the top of the workers' salaries. If you need me to make it any more obvious, this is clearly somebody killed in the building shadow, most likely by a Persona user of some kind. However, without being able to investigate, the party returns to looking for more parasite shadows. After some time, Nimue will inform the group of a website that has become the shadow location for another parasite. As we go along, these sections will get kind of brief from here, since it'll just mostly be a story breakdown, character descriptions, and any dungeon gimmicks I want to mention. Starting off, the group realizes the affected space is an adult video site, where Saito recognizes one of the posters as a girl from his high school class, Chizuru Taguchi, and the party makes plans to visit her and learn more. During their interview with Chizuru, she seems to play it down, but it's clear that she's under a lot of stress and exhaustion, implied to be the effects of the shadow possession. After Nimue pushes a bit too hard, the group is forced to leave after Chizuru explodes on them. Here the party explores for a bit, seeing the users of the site being tormented by shadows, including Chizuru in a hellish dungeon of domination. With the party stepping in, Chizuru explodes in frustration and awakens her persona, the Ruby Slippers, to destroy all the shadows around her. From this point, the player is free to tackle the dungeon at their own pace, before the deadline where the parasite will drain the affected fully. The site's dungeon could have an exploration gimmick of having to find link cards to access different areas of the site, kind of like a classic Doom keycard hunt, which would also play more into the aesthetics of the stage being more hellish inspired. The boss here uses its effects to lead humanity into hopeless temptation, softening their spirits against any kind of self-preservation. After defeating the boss, Adonios, and leaving the site's shadow, the MC catches the glimpse of a normal persona seeming to attack fleeing victims, killing their real-world counterparts in the process. The persona vanishes far too quickly for the party to follow after it, so all they can do is keep an eye out for any signs of it going forward. After some downtime, the next affected area is revealed to be an apartment complex where many tenants have recently become more sluggish and isolationist. During their investigation, none of the inhabitants are very willing to speak much with the party until they run into a cop making a wellness check on a young man whose family hasn't heard from him in 3 weeks. The subject of the call, Yoichi Nakai, begrudgingly opens the door for the cop and quickly shoos him away, but the party insists on talking with him, which he eventually agrees to. During the interview, Yoichi admits that during his stay in the apartment complex, he's plunged far deeper and deeper into shooter games, and eventually stopped contacting any other people and going outside as little as possible. This admission does seem to confuse him some, since he can't remember the exact reason why he chose to do so, only that it felt easy and natural to do it, clearly troubling him in the process. As the party questions more, Yoichi grows more flustered and eventually kicks the party out in a fit of rage. From here, the party checks the complex shadow through a nearby river and sees that it takes the form of a prison that keeps the residents captured and under constant supervision. This dungeon could have a security gimmick similar to Persona 5 with guard shadows that will throw you into a cell if they spot you, where you'll have to battle through multiple enemies to escape back into the main area. Which, depending on how you look at it, could be a good way of farming XP. When the party finds Yoichi in the complex's shadow, they see him trying to resist capture, unlike any of the other prisoners. And after helping him escape for a moment, he awakens his own persona, Tell's Crossbow. From here, Yoichi joins the party fully, and the player can freely explore the complex's shadow and take on the boss, Elios. Afterwards, the party regroups and talks about how widespread the issue of parasite shadows seems to be, agreeing that they'll see this mission through with the dialogue specifics changing based on how your current morality count is. On a more hopeful side, the gang speaks passionately about how they want to trust each other for their missions ahead, whereas on the more jaded side, they're more clinical about ending the specific threats. Soon enough, the party starts learning of multiple deaths related to a nearby university, where students have been suffering from stress-related injuries. The timing and frequency leads the group to think it's the effects of a parasite shadow, and set up an investigation with the public facilities of the school. After asking around the staff and student body, all they can really gather is that the victims were students that were vigorously studying for weeks and weeks on end, until eventually their exhaustion caught up with them in different ways. It's also obvious that some of the faculty is under the effects as well, since they praise the affected students' devotion to their studies, despite the self-harming effects. Eventually, the party is pointed towards a student that is currently showing the symptoms of the other victims, but legally, there's nothing anyone can really do to stop him at this point. Meeting the affected master student, Hideo Hojo, you can see him becoming self-destructively obsessive with his studies in fear of wasting the time he has in his life. During their conversation, Hideo just brushes off the party's concern and eventually berates them into leaving, where the party then checks in the school's library shadow through an overflowing toilet, confirming the presence of a parasite. The library shadow would take the form of a massive spiraling tower, reminiscent of something like the Tower of Babel, but more in the form of a gigantic library. When exploring the dungeon through the library toilets, there is a mechanic of enemies that can scan your party and gain immediate knowledge of your weaknesses, and have the active shadows target them if they can. Alternatively, you can find manuals around the dungeon that can tell you the weaknesses of common enemies in the area without having to battle them first. I feel like this plays into the knowledge theming of the whole section. Throughout the dungeon, you can also see where the previous victims have their knowledge drained from them through tendrils that pop out of the wall and seemingly all connect to the boss. And while following a trail, you can find the boss draining Hideo of his knowledge. After freeing him, Hideo freaks out at the knowledge of a whole other plane of existence, and in a fit of panic, awakens his persona Magic Mirror to clear his mind, instantly learning the full purpose of personas and the shadow world. From here, you can freely explore and gain Hideo as your navigator for this game, with the ability to divine enemy weaknesses and skill sets at the cost of waiting some time. Also, while exploring, the group runs into the mysterious Persona user for the first time, finding him in the middle of assassinating another affected student. After an exchange of ideals, he reveals that the student has completely abandoned his sick mother to pursue his studies, and, shadow or not, he's scum that deserves to die, by his own words. Finally, he runs off after recognizing he doesn't stand a chance against multiple Persona users all at once. Lastly, with the party defeating the boss Yao, it will prevent the curse from taking any more victims, and Hideo somberly accepts this victory over the creature that almost claimed his own life before being ingratiated by the rest of the team. Now, since we've reached the halfway point of the story, I figured we could take a small intermission to talk about some little details like possible social links, activities, or small changes to social mechanics. For some social links, a good introduction to the concept could be an intern at the MC's office who looks up to them, but deals with being overworked and really stressed out. He can meet the MC on lunch breaks or after work. A convenience store clerk who has gone through a massive burnout of her interest and has to work to restart her passions could meet up with her on days off in the afternoon. Another coworker is an older woman that's scared of her age catching up with her and sapping her vigor for life. Could meet with MC for lunch breaks or after work. A shorter cook with dreams of opening his own restaurant but is financially held back could meet the MC after he gets off work at his job for a break. A nerd from a comic shop that wants to recover from online echo chambers with IRL interactions could just meet him on weekends. Also, a group social link with a garage band that more so just wants to cut loose after work and has to learn where they want to go creatively. Could meet them on weekend nights at a bar that does live shows. Also, with our garage band social link, you could potentially give the player the option to join the band and get to play a Guitar Hero-like minigame while performing for social stat points. Also, I'd love to see other small minigame activities like the batting cages, for example, arcade games, random small-scale sports, or night classes for different skills that could also increase your stats. And the last social link idea I had was for another coworker who you can bond with over a shared interest in comic books and world news. He struggles with being caught up in the negative news cycle of things, and you can try to help him see the silver lining in small personal moments. Finally, some little things I want to add and reintroduce to the series. Most important to me is the upkeep system from P3 FES, with the party members getting tired the longer you stay in a dungeon, and having to keep up with the MC's hygiene. For the MC, this could also be visually demonstrated by his stubble growing more prominent and his apartment becoming more cluttered the longer you go without taking the time to stop and clean up. Hopefully, this can also double to teach some of the less desirable members of the fandom how to fix themselves. Also, on the same idea of bringing back stuff from FES, I'd love to see the party members become more independent in their social life, meaning that there's a bit more time where they can't go to dungeons. I think it just makes your party members feel more fleshed out when they have individual plans that come up in the way of your supernatural war on the human subconscious. A new idea that I've seen floating around a couple times is the option to invite friends to join you for activities if it's an available time for them, for some extra social link points. I mostly want this so you can still have your little dates with your romance girl, even after finishing her social link. Jesus, I'm so alone. Oh, but one last thing I wanted to touch on before getting back into the story is that I really want to rebalance the baton pass system somehow. I actually really like the system as it's very rewarding to players who quickly find the enemy's weaknesses and have an optimized party for it, but I think it's too overpowered as it is now. The first thing I do is make it a social link skill again, like how it was in the base game of Persona 5, which also makes more sense from an in-universe perspective too, since it's a skill that would require a certain level of trust between the two parties. Another drawback that I think would help it be more balanced is having the damage of your attacks be slightly reduced when your party member is baton passed to, since every time you chain a bunch of attacks together, it's mostly just to try to get an all-out attack anyways. Back to the main story, when the party visits a bar to celebrate their achievements, they notice some of the locals acting extreme, even though they haven't appeared to have drank a lot. Even the bartenders act completely oblivious to the rambunctious crowd. After going to the bar's shadow through a nearby harbor, the group sees the bar take the form of a love hotel that ushers its victims inside through a complex conveyor belt system. When exploring, the player can get stuck on the conveyor belt, and if they can't escape in time, they get dragged into a room and spit out with a drunk status effect. This would be a unique status condition for this dungeon, but kind of like the rattled status from P5, where the controls would be reversed until the status is cured. After some time in the dungeon, the group discovers one man who breaks out of a room on his own and starts barging around for a fight, setting his sights on the party. After fighting him and seeing the drunk man's persona potential, they try to sober him up and watch his persona Gabled finally awaken, as shadows surround them all. The drunk, Kazuo Kumagai, agrees to help the party, but when they return the next day to investigate further, they all find Kazuo already lost to the parasite's effects again, as it sends out signals to its repeat victims every night. After having a crisis of faith if he can even change, Kazuo sees the unwavering resolve of the MC and decides that if a younger man can shake the effects, then so can he. Here on is the free period to take down the boss Estefios by the deadline, with the newest party member making a vow of sobriety at the end of the mission. But before that, while in the regular gameplay, the party runs into a room where the rogue persona user has already killed a man, passionately exclaiming that the man he killed was selling out his own wife to afford his horrible addiction. He leaves the party with the final question if they would also have fought to save him too. Eventually, after some research, the party comes to the discovery that all of the previously affected areas are somehow all related to one company, the Hashiguchi Corporation. After learning this, they all set up to visit their headquarters building and investigate their full business ventures. However, upon entering the building, they can't even manage to get past the front desk before noticing the state of the workers being very strange. The workers mostly shuffle around like zombies, moving despite the look of exhaustion they all share. All workers act this way except one lady working the front desk who does seem tired but really tries her best to act friendly towards the party until they press about her company president, where she uncharacteristically locks up and asks the group to leave. Seeing this as good enough evidence, the party checks out the building's shadow through a fountain at the entrance, where it shows itself as a bustling nightclub with robotic workers that guide shadows around into feeding rooms. Inside, the player finds the secretary from earlier as a dancer who gets pulled off stage and taken to the top floor to see the president, where the party can follow after. After following all the way up, it's revealed that the company president is consciously running the building's shadow, directing shadows where they need to go and ordering them what they need to do. Before the secretary can be fed to the dungeon's boss, Sabbath, she awakens her persona Karn Wienen. In frustration, where the party finally busts in to save her and escape the building shadow. After a moment to calm down and bring the secretary, Nobuko Kajiwara, up to speed, where she joins the party to stop her boss from spreading the shadows across Japan. While exploring the dungeon in earnest, the player will have the challenge of climbing the towering building, with each floor holding different challenges from the next. This could include a floor full of weak shadows and a battle of attrition, a floor with a couple of strong shadows testing the player's evasion skills, a dark floor like the dark rooms in P3 and P5, and maybe a floor with a randomizer effect where the enemy shadows have randomized movesets. When finally encountering the boss again, the company president proclaims that his plan is too far underway already, and that nothing done now could possibly stop him, as he escapes and unleashes Sabbath on the party. With the boss defeated, the party escapes, and after some time, they eventually learn where President Hashiguchi is held up at. Now, we truly enter the end game of the story, where all the big, crazy, insane lore situation becomes more prominent, but I'll try to explain it diegetically. During the downtime till the next dungeon, the party members split up on their own time to get information about Hashiguchi and where he could possibly be. First, Nobuko finds the president's true home address by scouring files at her work, while Chizuru and Hideo research his properties and assets online. All three come to the conclusion that he is most likely held up in a large compound he owns. Saito and Kazuo also reveal that they've gotten information about the staffing schedule from chatting with some of the guards while they were off work at a bar. Lastly, Yoichi manages to get the compound's blueprints through underground internet groups. With all this information gathered together, the party goes to check out the compound's shadow through a small stream where it shows itself as a massive military post with intense security measures. On the team's first excursion into the dungeon, they meet the masked persona user who suggests they team up to take down Hashiguchi, which you can accept or deny as you wish. Accepting just adds him to your party, while denying him just causes him to leave and continue acting on his own. As the party explores the compound, they learn more about Hashiguchi's plan from research notes and documents left in testing sites and research labs. This plays more like a standard sci-fi horror game where you would learn more about the threat as you go around from audio dialogues and things of that sort. It's revealed through these dialogue exchanges that the grand scheme is to feed the 7 parasite shadows as much as possible before bringing them all together to fuse into an immense cosmic being known as the Archon, which can bring order to humanity at a passive price. The main aspect of getting through this dungeon is being able to shut down certain devices that can slightly control the shadows' movement within the vicinity, mostly causing them to bunch up in a single area. This area is also unique in that the shadows that are alerted to your presence will alert other shadows that are close to them, often leading to multiple shadows jumping the player at once. When finally getting to the main research station, you find Hashiguchi about to activate the shadow calling device with the boss of this area, Sakulas, the original parasite shadow that created all of the others. Hashiguchi offers himself to Sakulas to power it up before it attacks the party. During the boss fight, Sakulas can spit out smaller shadows to fight or eat party members, damaging them and summoning a shadow with the same moveset as them. After the fight, the boss eats the shadow calling device and calls forth the leftover remains of the previous bosses, either absorbing the scattered remnants or the discarded masses until the shadows come together and fully become the Archon. The Archon's first action is to address the party and swiftly teleport them all outside the compound, leaving the group with a sense of intense doubt at their chances of stopping the new godlike being. Their lack of effect on the Archon, even with their persona's strongest attacks, dismays them intensely as they split up to rest before meeting up again to discuss what they should do next. In the days after splitting up, the party begins to drift back into their daily schedule, only breaking to meet back up together at the request of the MC and Nimue, where they dismiss any possible chance of stopping the Archon, instead choosing to see if any negative effects come from his presence. After some time, even the MC starts losing himself to the effects, and the player themselves loses control as they watch him move through a couple days with no change. One night, the Archon visits the MC in his sleep and asks him if he's willing to strike a deal. Let the Archon passively drain the souls of humanity, and he'll guide humanity on a calm, easy path in life with no reason to worry. Bad ending, you accept the guided path and humanity is controlled for the rest of time. Denying the Archon, however, will make enough of a weakening for Nimue to break through and awaken the MC, making plans to go around and snap out the other party members. After having the party agrees to storm the altered compound, regardless of the danger it poses. When going to explore the changed dungeon, the player will find that the compound has developed multiple new corridors and rooms made of a fleshy growth that have different effects that can be shown by the color they emit. These effects can range from slowing the player down while they walk through it, draining their HP or SP while walking through, or even distributing random status effects to the party when you make contact with the floor. All these aim to make the intruders easier targets for the many wandering shadows that are themselves immune to the effects. Also, throughout the changed compound, the user can change the layout as the main puzzle to get to the Archon, who sits in the middle of the structure. Before getting to the final boss, though, the Archon will speak to the party on multiple occasions, trying to test their faith, to which all of them stand firm with the MC's help. Only the masked persona user falters the hardest if he's still on your team, and could potentially betray the party. It's finally revealed that the masked persona user is the negative news-obsessed social link coworker and needs special help to keep from falling to the Archon. If you have a high enough level of hope and have completed his social link by this point, you can help him to believe that he can still fight this threat and save people from mindless control. If your alignment leans too much towards jaded disillusion and you haven't finished his social link, he'll betray the party and you must fight him as a mini-boss with a powered-up persona and shadow minions the Archon sent to assist him. You'll also have to fight him if you denied letting him join your party earlier. He'll just kind of show up as a champion for the Archon. Defeating him will just result in the Archon absorbing him to gain his remaining power, truly kind of showing the futility of standing against or with him. Finally, getting to the Archon's final fight, the large new god can attack with its 3 changing eyes and 2 arms. The eyes deal different damage types and status effects, while the arms can deal a big physical damage once each, or use both turns to grab a party member and give them a unique condition that removes the player's control from them. Halfway through the fight, the Archon will merge all 3 of his eyes together and deal immense damage to the entire party and inflict them all with despair. This spell is quickly broken by Nimue, who fully awakens to her position as Lady of the Lake and loses her physical form to summon Avalon to the battlefield. It's Mystic Water curing the party completely and giving them a damage buff for the rest of this fight. This water also perfectly clears the MC's mind and allows his persona to evolve into the Jabberwocky, an immensely powerful beast that gains an additional buff for the rest of the fight. Finally taking down the Archon, the player is left with their final choice. Use your persona to destroy the Archon outright, or use it to absorb it into yourself. Destroying it will let loose the shadows back into the world, but absorbing it will cause your persona to become dormant forever. Regardless of the choice you made, the compound shadow will crumble, and in its place will be a small spring, a small memory of Nimue's Avalon. From here, the party comes together to celebrate their victory and remember the friend who has left them, as the building's shadow becomes dormant. From here, a small time skip comes up to show where the party is after some time. This is where your morality choices affect the story the most. If you had all the party members accept their shadows, the team will stick together as lifelong friends, much like the ending to most Persona games. If you only had some of the party members accept their shadows, the team will stick together for some time, but eventually drift apart over time. If none of the party members accepted their party shadows, then the team will pretty much immediately disband since the mission's been completed and each of them need to face their own issues now. This is more meant to be a reward for the players who looked out for their party and made the effort to help them without forcing the player to finish off all their social links. And that's pretty much all I had for the main story, outside of some smaller details that would really be more tedious for the purpose of this video to get into. I do think I covered everything I want to say in this video, so I guess all there really is to say is thanks for sitting through all my silly little ramblings. I've had some thoughts about small gameplay changes I'd like to make to the base Persona gameplay for a while, so I figured this would be a good enough vehicle of portraying that, while also showing off a unique narrative I don't think Atlas themselves would entertain too much. Oh, and there's still one more little detail I wanted to mention. So you know how each game since 3 has had a very distinct musical theming to the soundtrack? 3 being very hip-hop, 4 having a very poppy soundtrack, and 5 being very jazz-centered. I thought giving this hypothetical game that breaks a lot of the series traditions a punk rock styled sound would be so cool and pretty thematic to boot. For any specific artist I'd like to see work on this in some way, obviously it has to be the Pillows, since their music has the perfect balance to fit the series and provide various types of tracks you'll need for this kind of game. Alright, I think that's all the geeking out I really had planned for this, so I guess we can go ahead and wrap it up. If you liked any of the art or anything like that you saw in this video and you want to see anything else like that, feel free to check out my Twitter, Newgrounds. We'll have that in the comments and description or whatnot. Feel free to subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed any of this, or feel free to check out the channel. I've done plenty of different hypothetical games. If you like this kind of style, I have a whole playlist. Not a lot of them so far, but I do have some from series you might recognize. And with all that, I just want to make one final promise before ending off the video. I really want to make 2026 a better year for this channel than last year was. I was struggling a lot in my personal life to try and find the motivation and effort and ideas to get these videos out. I got some out, but it wasn't to the consistency that I'd like to. So hopefully for this year, starting from this point, I can have at least one video come out every month or so. 1 month, 2 months, as long as it's not too much of a break in between. Mostly because I know the algorithm really hates it when you do that. It's the one thing I have been able to learn so far. But if there's anything you'd like to let me know, criticisms with the video, anything you think I could have done better, or how you would like to do your own kind of Persona game if you want to do an adult setting, or if you think it's kind of you're fine with it being the high school centered affair that it normally is. Feel free to tell me how you like to do that in the comments below. I'd love to hear what kind of ideas you have. With all that, I think I'm pretty satisfied. So, with all that being said, I appreciate you for watching, and I hope to see you in whatever I do next. So, I'll see ya.